Hello, everyone, and welcome to Madlit Musings. Today, I have with me Tim Shoemaker, who is an author of some pretty amazing books for middle grade and young adults. Am I correct in the age
You
groups
are
there?
absolutely
Okay.
right. Yep.
All
Uh-huh.
right. Well, thanks so much for being here. This is a blast. And you and I have already had like a 20-minute conversation prior to recording. So
That's good. And it's been good.
it
I
has.
can't tell everybody they missed it. Right.
Right. Y'all missed out, and then we decided to press record and keep going. So
Uh,
but you have a series that's out, Escape from the Everglades, every hidden thing, and then book 3 that just released in June, if I'm not mistaken, called The Deep End, right?
right, right,
Yeah, so
right.
tell us just a little bit about that series and who it's written for.
Well, I love writing mystery, adventure, suspense, thriller, type of things. And so this is really for that. Yeah, it could be high end, middle grade, 12 and up is really
Okay.
where we're at.
Yep.
And or that YA market there. I love writing about protagonists that are probably, well, in this series they're 14, 15, um, uh, getting close to 16. They're kind of at a stage where there's so many changes going on, so much
Yeah.
that could be happening, but yet they're old enough to be able to do a lot of things and get some freedom, some
Hmm.
leash.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah,
And lots of adventure. I mean, the Everglades, I'm seeing hints of crocodiles and alligators and, cool things too that keep them entertained for sure.
yes, yes, right. And part of that is we like stories that can kind of scare us just a little bit.
Yeah.
I do anyway.
Right, right,
The safety of home, and so what a scary place that is.
right.
When I was doing research, it was like, oh my goodness, um, I never want to come back here again. So, so I thought originally I was going to do this whole series
Yeah,
in that area because I thought, oh, there's so much, fuel for
right.
mystery, adventure, suspense type things. But really, it was just such a scary area that I thought, you know what, our protagonist, he's a park ranger's son. He's going to
Okay.
move,
He's gonna
and
move.
yeah, Dad's gonna put in for a transfer because, you know, uh, I had a couple of really close calls,
Really?
personally. Oh my goodness, yeah, yeah. In
Really?
fact, I may not come back the next time, so we don't want to, we don't want to push that.
We
So
just took research a little bit too far, huh? A little bit
yes,
life-threatening.
we did, we did. It was, dedication with a
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you have firsthand knowledge of alligators and Everglades, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Right. I wanted to see him at night. I wanted
Okay.
to see the way their eyes glowed.
Oh.
Um, right, right.
You can
Not
see it on
good.
National Geographic
It's
Channel.
not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. And it is so scary when you're close to them. So yeah.
Yeah.
But and then the rest of the series, then
Yeah.
they do move up to that just north of Boston. Uh,
Okay.
there's that, Gloucester, Rockport,
Yep.
out on Cape Ann there, just a really great area. And so as National Park Ranger dad, he can work in Boston. I mean,
Right.
Bunker Hill and the
Right.
USS Constitution, they're both run by the national
Yeah.
park. So
Oh,
it
yeah,
works
that's
out
super
really
fun.
good.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love it. I
and
love it. And there's no alligators there, so you're safe,
there are
right?
not. There are not. I keep checking,
Oh,
but
that's good. That's good.
right. Mhm.
Oh, we have a pond here. I live in Wisconsin, and we have a pond, and my kids will go down and go swimming. And I always tell them, watch out for the alligators. And it worked when they were younger. And now they're just like, Mom, really? There's no alligators in Wisconsin. I'm like, well, there's always the
Yeah.
first time, you
There
know?
is. There is. Hey, you take him for a night swim, and
Yes.
those words will come back to him.
Right, right. Night swims
No
are, why
wonder.
is it that the, water in the wilderness at night is 10 times more scary
I
than
know it.
during the day?
I know it.
I don't know
That's why.
why.
That's why, as we as writers, we do so many
Right,
scenes at night,
right,
right?
right. It's
In
the
the dark. It's
shadows.
yeah.
Dun dun dun.
Right. Right.
Well, I love that you're writing for this age group. I'm on a lot of Facebook groups, and I'm a homeschooling parent, so there's always questions of like, are there any Christian books for
Mm,
my kids to read versus the stuff that they're picking up just in the general mainstream. So why is it that you're writing for this age, and what do you think is important about it?
Oh my goodness. All right, there's so much.
Yeah.
Um, my my heart is for this age. It's been for this age. I've got two younger brothers.
Okay.
One's 9 years younger, one's 12 years younger. So uh, I had a riot with them growing up. I did a lot of babysitting. There were stitches, there was all kinds of stuff, but we had fun. And that's where I think my love of kids really started. It started long before I was a dad. And so my heart's always kind of gone out, especially as they're hitting some of those awkward years where there's so many changes. One time I had a writer friend um, talk to me and say, you know what, you should be writing fiction for adults. That's where the money is.
Yeah.
And I used to write for kids and, no more type of thing.
Right.
And, I thought about that and processed that. And for me, part of my heart is for the boys. We should go back and talk about that just a
Yeah,
little bit.
absolutely. Yep.
But I thought, there's so many books written for broken men.
Mhm.
Um, I want a chance to catch the readers before they're broken
Yeah.
and try to help keep them on some right paths. And also those that are wounded and are hurting and such.
Mhm.
I want to be there for them. Oh my goodness. So much more so than, with the adult. There's plenty of others that can write for them.
Right, right.
Let me have them here. But writing for boys is a little different.
Mhm.
So that's where my heart was, honestly. But you tell an agent that, don't.
No,
Don't tell them that that's where
no.
your heart is,
There's
because they kind of
no.
glaze over,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But with this series here, especially Focus on the Family, who is the publisher of that, they really had the vision.
Mm.
Uh, what do you do after Adventures in Odyssey
Right.
and after some of these things? All of a sudden, the kids are kind of just, I
Yeah.
don't want to say dropped, but they can't
Yeah.
quite fend for themselves yet, and especially with the boys. So you write them a little bit different. So my books are written to hold the attention of a boys, but girls still love them. There's
Oh,
certain
yeah.
things that you do to get them both. But if somebody says to me, well, I want to write for um, a young adult, or I want to write for middle grade, I said, you're writing for girls.
Mm.
Um, you know, but if they write it right for the boys, they'll get them both.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
can't lump boys
No.
and girls together at that point and say, I'm writing for both and expect to really get both. You got to pick one, do it
Yep.
right, and you'll get them both. So
Right,
anyway.
right. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So how do you think, as you're looking at fiction for kids, and one, how do they how are they impacted by truth through story at that age? Because I know as an adult, I can pick up a fiction novel and I can pick out thematic elements in a Christian novel or things like that, that I can say, oh, I need to apply that to my own personal spiritual walk.
Mhm.
How do you do that with a child and get across
Mm.
ideas and concepts where it's effective through fiction?
Well, I think, part of it is h- how they're taking the story in. So, for example,
Okay.
I write nonfiction and I write fiction.
Hmm.
So if I'm writing nonfiction, Jamie Joe, I'm gonna appeal to your logic center, and
Hmm.
I'm trying to get through there, and I'm hoping that I'll be persuasive enough on something, or something will resonate with you, and it'll go from your head to your heart. And
Hmm.
that's the type of thing that you'll adopt, and you say, yeah, maybe I should work on that, or maybe I'll try that type of thing. Now with fiction, it's completely different, because if you're reading past chapter 1, you're no longer taking it into your logic center.
Mm.
You've gotten wrapped up with the story. You've gotten wrapped up with these characters. You're caring about them. You're taking the story in through your heart.
Mm.
And so any lesson that I'm trying to get through, you don't have to worry about it going from their head to their heart. It's
Yeah.
already there.
Yeah.
And so with our kids, one of the big things that I'm careful with when I write, there's a number of things, right? So they're clean.
Right.
I don't have romance. I don't
Hmm.
make parents look like idiots, because they're not.
Thank you.
And I don't talk down to the the readers.
Yeah.
You know, you can have readers that are 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So many times you'll hear adults talking about as kids, and they think of them as not smart. No, I think of my readers as being very smart. They're
Yeah.
smarter than me in technology.
Yep.
And because they're a little closer to some of the math that I haven't done in a long time, they could probably beat me on a math test. So, you know, they're smart.
Hmm.
In some areas, they're smarter than me, but what they lack is experience.
Mm.
And that experience translates into wisdom. And
Yeah.
so they can make a lot of bad decisions or do some crazy things because they lack that experience, they lack that wisdom. But what
Hmm.
we can do with a story that's well written, with
Yeah.
really real characters that draw them in, that they like, our readers are going through those experiences with those characters, and they are actually gaining wisdom.
Yeah.
And so when they see how somebody that they saw in the story making a good choice or a bad choice and the effects of it, it helps
Yeah.
our kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's so exciting too, because I'll watch my kids, and we were talking a little bit about this before we got on, but I'll watch my kids spend, their summer vacation where there's a little bit more, well, I should say a lot of bit more freedom,
Mhm,
and they've got more access to, their YouTube channels they like to watch, and the
mhm,
streaming video services, etc. Versus when we crack down more in the fall, and it's like, no, before bed, let's get some good reading time in. Let's, because we're in
mhm.
that educational mindset now because it's
Yeah,
school. And
right.
I can see their personalities actually change,
Mm,
right? Like their
yeah,
interests. Like my husband and I were talking the other day about my children. They, we go hunting and we're outdoors, we do kayaking and different things like that with the kids. And this
that's so
summer,
good.
it's been great, but the mistake that I've made this summer is allowed so much just freedom to just make their choice. Like they're 11 and 14 now, like just do
Mm,
what you want. I can trust you, right? And they're just turning into couch potatoes and sloths. And then
yeah.
you're like, hey, let's go kayaking. Oh, okay. Like their entire personalities and focus of what they're interested in has
Mhm.
changed and shifted because of media versus the written word or interaction. And I'm not sure what my point is with that. It's just building off of whatever you said.
Mhm. Well, it's a reality, and it's
Yeah.
something we have to be aware of. It's um, that's why we have to be deliberate with some of these things, right? Because
Yeah.
left to themselves, you know, most people will not become better,
Mm,
and that's very true with kids as well.
hmm.
So they need that guidance, and sometimes, like for example, I'll talk to like say some parents and maybe at that junior high age, um, they let their kids make the decision
Hmm.
of whether they're going to go to church or not. And
Right.
it's like, ooh, uh, you know, their brain isn't fully developed till
Right.
25 or whatever it is, right?
Right. Right.
So at their half brain level, we're giving them a choice like that. Um, and it's probably not the best time to do that, but instead to help them catch a vision for what church is really all about and
Hmm.
why it's important and what they can be doing there.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there's these things. If we just leave it to them, they
Yeah.
probably won't go in a great direction. But you know what? But we make it fun, right? I
Right.
mean, oh my goodness, some of the things you were talking about, those outdoor things,
Yeah.
that's that's fun stuff. And like if I would be reading to kids or whatever, I'm going to do everything I can to make that a fun experience.
Yeah.
So um, let's say you're going out canoeing or kayaking. Well, in a Ziploc, there's going to be a book because someplace we're going to stop and we're going to pull out some snacks and
Yep.
we're going to read. And so there's something about letting them drop into that story world.
Yeah.
You know, that could be so much fun, but
Yeah.
we make it fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's funny that you say that. My husband and I used to fly fish before we had kids. And he
Oh,
would always laugh because we get about, halfway through the day and I'm kind of done. I'm done and he's just getting started. And so I'd have my waders and I'd pull out a Ziploc baggie that I had tucked in my waders and it had a book in it. And so I
oh,
would sit down at the edge of the creek while he's fly fishing and I'm just buried in my book. So
that's great stuff.
yeah,
See that? I mean, making the atmosphere and such fun is so good. And even there, uh, like with kids, the
yeah,
darker you can get
hmm,
the room, like if you're reading to them,
yeah,
the better it is, especially with boys,
yeah.
because they don't have to worry about their emotions showing or anything on their face.
Oh, okay.
And that can be embarrassing to them if they
Yeah,
get, emotional on something,
yeah,
um, or, um, or whatever. And so sometimes you can even take, like one of the green glow sticks,
yeah,
that you pick up in the dollar
yeah.
store, and you can crack that and put that in the seam. And so you can read
Oh,
to them by that light, and you can just keep the room, dark and creepy, and just have that fun where they're kicking back or they've got a
right,
snack and they can
right.
drop in story world.
So this
Yeah.
is how we read a Tim Shoemaker book, right? We need the green glow
Oh,
stick, a bag of popcorn, and a
oh,
dark room. I'm seeing my future here.
invite me there. I want to be there. Right.
And
So,
Tim Shoemaker on Zoom. Okay, perfect.
that is so fun. Yeah. Um, and sometimes even like with let's say a niece or nephew, and
Yeah,
you're going to read to them, whatever. Well, one time I got this old pickup, and so we throw some cushions in there, and I
yeah,
and I driven them to a spot, and we're just kicked back uh, in the bed of the pickup,
right,
and
right.
and I'm reading to them. And at one point, they finally, as they're kind of looking around as I'm reading the story, they're like, "Wait a second." And it was about this scene where there's a kidnapping, and it's like, it, what was it? Was it here? Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
So, so anyway, we just have fun with it. So, yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Well, and it's true, their imaginations are so ripe at this age.
Mm,
Like I was in
yeah.
bed the other night and my daughter, she's been camping in our camper. And so she hasn't
Oh,
even slept inside all summer, right? And she wakes
what?
me up at midnight. She's like, Mom, I'm terrified. I'm terrified. I'm like, why? And she goes, Well, I went outside and I heard something in the woods and I just instantly was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And I'm like, it
Oh,
probably was a raccoon, honey. She goes, I know. But at nighttime, when you hear something in the woods, Mom,
mm,
you're going to die.
yeah. Oh, why are you getting out of the camper?
Right? Well, she's like, Well, I had to come
Why are we
inside
checking out the woods?
and
Yeah,
use the
right.
bathroom. Oh, it's
Um,
fun. It's fun. So, okay,
that's
so
good.
story and kids can convey truth. What happens if you have a kid who A doesn't like to read, B, this is boring, or
Mm.
C just really has a hardened heart to things that maybe imply an element of Christianity or God or things like that? Do you have
Uh,
thoughts and tips for parents on that?
well, we still want to get them that input.
Yeah.
And so, even if it means reading to them. Now, our youngest son, he struggled with reading.
Okay.
So it wasn't just that he was bored, but he struggled with it.
Mhm.
And so I ended up reading to him a lot. Now, he became a paramedic, and eventually he had to read these textbooks that would make your eyes bleed, uh, talk about boring.
No
But
kidding.
the fact is, by reading to him, his vocabulary went up, his
Mhm.
comprehension, everything went up just like normal,
Sure.
by reading to him. But you've got to find the right, find the right story. So, it's so gratifying, getting letters from, well, both readers and parents
Mhm.
where they've said, we just can't get them interested in reading. It's like, it's not necessarily that, or we can't get them
Mm,
interested in the story.
right.
It's finding the right story.
Yeah.
It's finding the right style. And so a lot of times, especially for our boys,
Mhm.
they like that mystery, adventure,
Yeah.
suspense, thriller that's
Mhm.
clean. Um, and here's the other thing, and man, I'll just go on a limb here.
Do it.
Um, so I hope this is okay.
Do it.
Um, but you know, if it's not connecting, if a parent's trying that, you've got to keep trying different genres until you get it. For example, there's so much out there that's fantasy, and that's terrific. There's some great fantasy out there, but realize that for our younger readers, middle grade, YA, usually, not always, but fantasy to me will take one step closer to entertainment and one step away from inspiring, unless you do it a certain way.
Right.
So in other words, if they've just got somebody who's got a special ability, oh my goodness, that's so fun to read, but I'll never be like that because I don't have that special ability. So if we take that type of genre and we took an ordinary person and we put them in that world as the protagonist, your reader will identify more with that, and they'll be able to be more like that person. So as you're reading that fantasy, whatever, try to find one where maybe the main character does not have all the special abilities. Go back to Lord of the Rings, right?
Right.
Frodo, I mean, he didn't have any abilities as Sam, but in fact, they had something they had to get rid of, because it was dangerous. And that was brilliant. That was really good. So we keep looking for that. And
I think that's one of the reasons Chronicles of Narnia was always so, such a big thing too with me as a kid, because I felt like I could walk through that wardrobe and have the exact same adventure. It didn't take any special talent. It just required a wardrobe.
Yeah.
And I tried, and I kept hitting my head on the back of the wardrobe because it never actually opened in Narnia. I'm not sure what happened, but
oh man.
such a disappointment. But my daughter, when she was little, she had her closet and she would push her clothes away and she'd be like, I can't see Aslan, Mom.
And
it was just,
you want to show her so bad.
I know. I'm like, but you can see them in your mind and your imagination, and that's the best part. So
well, you know what? And I'm just thinking, I'm not sure I answered your other question before too, but I mean, some of that importance of the fiction and the nonfiction in the head and the heart and all that stuff. Another thing too, just looking at the standpoint of how important story is. I think it's more important than even we as writers fully understand. Think about this. Okay. How many sermons did God choose to record in the Bible of Jesus's? There was one. Sermon on the Mount. How many stories? Lots. Because of the power, the fact of remembering how that can teach truth so well. Oftentimes in our churches, we have it so upside down. They spend so much time, more of the lecture type of thing, because that's what the serious, deep Christianity is.
Right.
But that isn't always the most effective. And we have to remember that we react to stories and such. And that's why we have so many great stories in the Bible. And one example of this, I guess, the importance of fiction and why we need it, even if our kids say, oh, I don't want that or whatever, stories can be so important. But do you remember when King David, he'd messed up with Bathsheba? He had basically had Uriah the Hittite killed. So he's done some really bad things.
Right.
And what was he doing at that point? Everything a king does. He was still going through his life. He was still going through. It hadn't broken him. And that was not acceptable to God.
Right.
So God sent the prophet Nathan to David with a story. And he starts to tell this story about, there's this man. He had this lamb and he just loved that lamb, slept with it. And there's that rich man. Oh, he had a lot of sheep and had a guest come. He didn't want to kill one of his sheep. He took that man's lamb and he slaughtered it. And of course, David, he's just furious, right? He's livid. And that man's going to pay. And then we get that famous line that Nathan says, you're the man. And that ripped David open. That's what broke him.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you look in your Psalms, to that famous Psalm of Confession, Psalm 51. And that's got those things in it that so many of us remember, you know, about cleansing us, you know, and our sin. It's a famous psalm for that. But in the very beginning, it says Psalm 51 for the director of music, a psalm of David, when the prophet Nathan came to him after David had committed adultery with Bathsheba. And so the product of that was he broke. And we have Psalm 51 as the result. The show is brokenness. Oh my goodness, we've got to use stories because they can do so much. They warn us, they protect us, they make us brave, they motivate us to action. They give us hope. They convict us of ways that we might be being a jerk or insensitive.
Right.
They heal. So many different things that stories can do that nonfiction just doesn't.
Right.
Because the way we take it in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I love it. And I've always, wow, now I'm repeating myself because I'm thinking faster than I can speak. But, I think about story, and so often I've compared it, and it's a horrible comparison, but I compare story to be like the gateway drug to learning, in a sense. Like, you have to have something to get started with, like to draw you in. And in that element of a spiritual relationship with the Lord and learning, there is so much of the intellectual elements, the theological, the doctrinal, et cetera, that's all important in learning about our faith and learning about a relationship with God. And yet, if you approach anyone who's not already there, they shut down because it's just too much. It's too much information, right? And so I look at fiction as almost that gateway to introducing deeper theological thoughts or deeper concepts of the faith and deeper things that when now you are faced with them in a nonfiction standpoint, you're like, oh, I kind of remember reading about that over there in that story. Let me explore it in real life now.
Jaime Jo, I think you're really onto something there because it makes so much sense. You think about if you were witnessing to somebody that really knew little to nothing about Christ, you could start out and just march through,
right.
4 spiritual laws or whatever, whatever you're gonna hit them with, right?
Right.
But if you start with your story, if you start with your testimony, and just tell them what Jesus did for you, talk about a gateway.
Right.
Now they're seeing how that opens things up for them, and sure, they'd want to learn more about the faith if they come to Jesus, right? And okay, now let me help me understand some of these different things, because now their story has changed. He's in their story, and they want to learn more about him.
Yeah. One of the most exciting things, and I keep dragging this podcast on, but one of the most exciting things that I had as an author was I had written, a lot of my books tend into the creepier side of life and the darker, and they hint toward, paranormal stuff and murder. And, I always call them like the Scooby-Doo of Christian fiction, right? There's never really a ghost, but it sure seems like it till the last page. But what was interesting was I got an email from a reader who was a professed Wiccan witch, and they had read one of my books, and they said, this book has started me on a journey to explore if there's other elements of God that I haven't met yet. And that floored me, because I'm like, I have somebody who's the last demographic that I would have necessarily been marketing to. I mean, I'm not taking advertisements out in the Wiccan catalog, right?
Not anymore, right?
No, I don't expect them. I wouldn't judge them if they didn't pick up my books, right? But she picked up my book, and then about a year later, she emailed me and she said, I know you probably can't find me on Instagram anymore, because that was how we had originally got connected. She said, I had to turn off my account because most of the people in the Wiccan community have become very upset with me because I've been exploring God in areas outside of the Wiccan faith. And a lot of that has come from reading the novels that you've produced. And I just floored me. Now, she's not professing Christianity, she's not professing Jesus, but she's professing a journey and looking at fiction and how something in there sparked something to go, maybe there's more.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, wow. That is terrific.
And it's so exciting. And that's what I love about fiction. And that's why I love these podcasts is
Mhm.
every author who comes on here has a unique angle of, I don't even want angle sounds like a sales thing. They have a unique perspective
Yeah,
of
right.
their story and what they want to accomplish. And none of them are the same, right? Like
Mhm.
I've chatted with some authors who are overtly proclaiming Christ in their books, and you can't read their book without seeing the name of Jesus written there multiple times. And then
Mm.
you have authors like me who you may not see the name of Jesus written, but he's there infused in every scene,
Uh-huh.
and it's just they're different strokes for different folks, and yet
Yeah,
it's all pointing to that spark of hope that is Christ in every story that's
that's
produced
good.
by an author.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. I like that,
So
Jaime Jo.
well, this has been fun. I think we could talk for probably another 2 hours, but then our listeners would be like, please stop.
Right, right.
So
No,
I'll
that's
bring this to
good.
a close. But how do people find your books for their kids? I think we need to end with that. How do they best get attached to those stories?
Well, you can go to timshoemaker.com,
Yep.
and that will help them see what books are there, or they can just go to Amazon
Okay.
and put my name in,
Hmm.
and they'll see that. So that would be great. But yeah, I love that mystery, adventure, suspense, thriller, but definitely not hokey Christian
Right.
fiction.
Exactly.
So
Let's not do that.
for
Well,
sure.
Tim, this has been so much fun having you here on the podcast. And hopefully we can have you again and we can continue more conversations about fiction and youth and the importance of our next generation.
I'd love it. Thanks so much, Jaime Jo.